What if the reason you're constantly exhausted, like completely burned out by modern life, isn't because your morning routine is broken?
Right, or because you haven't downloaded the right productivity app or whatever.
Exactly. What if the real reason you're overwhelmed is that you are quite literally trying to carry the entire universe on your own shoulders?
Which is a heavy lift, to put it mildly.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Today, we are looking at an ancient framework that suggests our modern obsession with the hustle, the relentless, isolated grind, is essentially the psychological equivalent of trying to dig a well with a needle.
Yeah, that's a very striking image.
Welcome to a brand new deep dive. We have a truly fascinating document today. It's a collection of 7 essays and a poem, and it's titled, let me make sure I have this right, General Explanation about the Journey of the Soul in Vertical and Horizontal Planes.
It's a mouthful, but the content is incredible. It basically blends Sufi mysticism with Western process philosophy.
And the mission of this deep dive is to see how this ancient spiritual framework offers a really radical cure for our modern burnout.
Yeah, and I want to establish right up front that isn't just some abstract, purely academic philosophy. It's really a practical blueprint.
Like a survival guide.
Exactly. It's a blueprint for navigating life's desert, as the text calls it. It answers this core question of why we make life so impossibly hard for ourselves.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Okay.
Because to understand how to fix it, we first have to understand the 2 fundamental ways the text says humans move through the world.
Right, the horizontal path and the vertical path.
Let's start with the horizontal path, because that sounds an awful lot like the water most of us are swimming in right now.
It absolutely is. So the horizontal path, the source refers to it as mujahada or suluk, is basically the path of intense striving.
Okay.
It relies entirely on your own free will. You are battling your ego, which in Sufism is called the nafs. And because it's all on your shoulders, it is incredibly long, painful, and slow.
So that's the digging a well with a needle thing. But wait, I have to push back here for a second.
Sure, go ahead.
In the modern world, aren't we taught that this kind of hard work, like the grind, is the only noble way to succeed? Like, why does the text frame this as such a painful trap?
Well, because it's fundamentally exhausting. Think about it. If you believe you are completely in charge, then every failure is entirely your fault. You're fighting the universe with very limited human tools.
Oh man, yeah. You're taking on all the risk.
Right, and so the text introduces an alternative, which is the model of expectationless, painless, and direct vertical ascension.
That sounds like an infomercial product, but like a really good one.
I know, right? But it's essentially the path of divine attraction, or jadba. Instead of relying on your own grueling effort, you are pulled upward by divine grace. It's literally likened to stepping into an elevator.
An elevator. I mean, that sounds amazing. But isn't that a bit escapist? Like, do you just levitate away from paying your taxes?
No, not at all. And that's a huge misconception. The vertical ascension isn't a straight line shooting up into the clouds. It's helical.
Helical, like a spiral.
Exactly like a spiral staircase. Imagine you're walking up a spiral staircase in a glass tower. As you go up, you are still rotating over the exact same worldly events.
Okay, so you still see the traffic, you still deal with health issues and bills.
Yes, you still experience poverty, sickness, wealth, all of it. But your consciousness is at a higher elevation, so those things can't shake you anymore.
Oh, wow. So you're looking down at the storm instead of standing in the rain.
Precisely. And the really wild part is what happens to your perception of time? It accelerates. You leap out of the mechanical anxiety of the clock and enter what they call the eternal moment, or anadam.
The eternal moment. That immediately reminds me of that Ahmed Hamdi Tanpanar poem in the text, Time and Bursa.
Oh, yeah, that's a perfect connection.
Because there are those lines about being in the indivisible flow of a monolithic, vast moment. It sounds so peaceful.
It is. But again, you don't detach completely. The ideal state described here is the salik-i meksab.
The salik-i meksa.
Yeah, it means someone who combines that horizontal, striving, doing the daily work with the vertical divine pull. You're engaged with society, but your spirit is on the elevator.
Okay, so if the vertical path is this amazing elevator of grace, what is weighing us down? Like, why are we stuck digging with the needle?
Well, the source material gives a really surprising answer to this. It says the ultimate trap is human love.
Wait, really? Here's where it gets really interesting, because we usually think of love as like the ultimate positive force in the universe,
Yeah,
right?
you do, yeah.
But this text is saying love actually creates suffering. How does that work?
Okay, so think about metaphorical worldly human love, it inherently contains duality. There's a lover and a beloved.
Right, two separate people.
And because of that separation, there's a desire for possession. You want union, you want reciprocation, and that triggers the ego.
Oh, I see. So the ego starts asking, do they love me back?
Exactly. Why didn't they text me? Or I did this for them, why aren't they grateful? It creates expectations.
And when those expectations aren't met, you get jealous and disappointed.
Yes, you get battered on that slow horizontal plane because your peace depends entirely on another flawed human being.
Man, that is so true. So if human love is the trap, what's the antidote? The text talks about compassion, right?
Yes, compassion. Because unlike love, true compassion is completely unconditional and expectationless.
Like a mother's love for a child. Or, honestly, it makes me think of feeding a stray cat.
That's actually a great analogy.
Right, because when you put food out for a stray cat, you don't expect it to turn around and say thank you. You just do it.
And because you expect nothing, your ego vanishes. Expectation zeroes out. When you show pure compassion, you experience this elevator effect. You ascend vertically to God's attribute of the merciful, which is Arahim.
Wow. So the goal is to basically evolve our painful, conditional human love into this expectationless divine compassion.
Exactly. You drop the heavy baggage of the ego.
Okay, so how do we practically do that? How do we step onto the elevator? Because this requires a total reversal of how society tells us to act, right?
Oh, absolutely. The secret keys here are two concepts, helplessness and poverty. In the text, they're called aks and far.
Okay, see, helplessness and poverty sound like terrible things. They sound like complete weakness.
They do sound that way to the modern ear, but in this framework, they are literal superpowers. It's not about despair. It's the profound realization that you don't control the sun, you don't control the air you breathe, or even how your cells divide.
So instead of trying to muscle through life thinking we're the CEO of the universe, admitting our poverty is actually what hands the steering wheel over to infinite power.
That is exactly it. You stop fighting. And to do this, you have to shift your gaze. The text introduces contemplation, or tafakkur, and specifically this concept called manaya harfi.
The meaning of the letter.
Right. So say you're looking at a flower. If you just look at it for its own physical beauty, that's the horizontal view. That's manaya ismi.
You're just seeing a plant.
Exactly. But if you look at that same flower as evidence of divine artistry, like a letter written by a master, that's manayu harfi, that's the vertical view.
Oh, wow. So you're seeing the intention behind it. Which makes me think about how we view ourselves, too.
How so?
Well, the text talks about our intellect and our ego as just being trusts, right? Eminent.
Yes, absolutely.
Because if I claim that my talents and my brain are mine, I have to defend them. The weight of that is crushing. But if I just say, hey, these are just borrowed from the true owner, I can drop the burden instantly.
Boom, you're no longer carrying the weight of the world. And the author grounds this in a really powerful parable about two travelers in a desert.
Yes, the desert parable.
Yeah.
This mirrors our modern psychological crises so perfectly. So set the scene for us.
Okay, so you have these two travelers walking into a vast, dangerous desert. The first is the proud traveler. He represents the modern, egocentric narcissist.
Right, the guy who trusts only his wallet and his intellect. He's totally self-reliant.
Exactly. He's the embodiment of you are the master of your destiny. But when unpredictable things happen, a storm, an economic crisis, an illness, he completely crumbles.
Because he's trying to shoulder the entire universe alone. It leads to terrible anxiety and burnout.
All right, he feels chronically lonely. But then you have the second traveler, the humble traveler. He represents the self-actualized person.
And he knows his helplessness, right?
Yeah.
So he invokes the name of the king of the desert before he even steps foot in it. He says, Bismillah.
Yes. He surrenders the outcome. And here's the absolute genius of the parable. Both travelers face the exact same highwaymen and the exact same storms.
Wait, really? So the vertical path doesn't just magically erase your problems?
No, it doesn't erase the desert. It changes your psychological relationship to it.
Yeah.
The humble traveler has peace because he knows he's under the king's protection. He lives in that eternal moment, totally free from anxiety.
But practically speaking, what does this mean for the listener tomorrow morning? Do they just lay in bed and do nothing because they're helpless?
No, not at all. That's where intention comes in. Intention is what turns your mundane daily habits into worship. You still go to work, but you do it with a higher purpose, not just to feed your ego.
Okay, that makes sense. But how do you keep from getting like a spiritual ego, from getting intoxicated by those highs?
That's the role of uprightness, or istiqamet. It acts as the brake. It keeps you balanced and humble so you don't drift away from reality.
I love that. And to really drive this home, there's a memory from the author's own life in the source material that just perfectly captures this shift.
The story about the childhood storm.
Yes. So he's like 5 or 6 years old, and there's this massive storm raging outside.
Pitch black, howling wind, torrential rain.
Right. And his grandmother forgets her prayer beads at a nearby house. And the boy, driven by this innocent, pure arrogance, is like, I can do it, I'll go get him.
He steps out into the torrent, totally relying on his own little ego. I can do it alone.
But then there's this terrifying flash of truth.
A literal bolt of lightning. It turns the night into day for a split second, followed by this deafening thunder.
And in that flash, he realizes how incredibly small he is, right?
Exactly. The illusion vanishes completely. He turns around, runs back inside, and admits he can't do it.
Which brings us to the core lesson here. True maturity doesn't begin when you think you can do everything. It begins the exact moment you recognize your limits.
Yes. There's a beautiful couplet in the text about this. The proud one walks alone, bearing burdens none can sustain. The heart that knows its weakness finds mercy's door again.
That is incredible. So to synthesize all of this for you listening right now, whether you're prepping for a massive meeting tomorrow or just trying to survive the daily grind, the secret is not to hustle harder.
It's really not.
The secret isn't to stay on that painful horizontal plane. It's to drop the ego, recognize what you actually cannot control, and step onto the vertical elevator of compassion and surrender.
And I want to leave you with a final thought on that. We talked about that lightning strike revealing the boy's weakness.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, what if the biggest crisis, the most disruptive lightning strike in your own life right now, isn't actually a failure at all?
Oh, wow.
What if it's the exact moment you're being invited to stop digging the well with a needle, to finally drop your heavy backpack of pride and step onto the elevator?
That is definitely something to think about. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious out there and maybe give the elevator a try.